Welcome to Freya's Fairy Tales, where we believe fairy tales are both stories we enjoyed as children and something that we can achieve ourselves. Each week, we will talk to authors about their favorite fairy tales when they were kids and their adventure to holding their very own fairy tale in their hands. At the end of each episode, we will finish off with a fairy tale or short story read as close to the original author's version as possible. I am your host, Freya Victoria. I'm an audiobook narrator that loves reading fairy tales, novels, and bringing stories to life through narration. I'm also fascinated by talking to authors and learning about their why and how for creating their stories. We have included all of the links for today's author and our show in the show notes. Today is part 1 of 2, where we are talking to J. Gabriel Gates about his novels. Over the next 2 weeks, you will hear about his journey of writing since he was young, going from being traditionally published to self-published, going straight to readers and avoiding gatekeepers, having the freedom to do what you want with your book, selecting an audiobook narrator, using TikTok to get in front of readers and learn what they want, and weaving your story together. Girl of Hearts, Luck God Series, Book 1. 4 tribes of ruthless demigods rule over luck in our world: hearts, diamonds, clubs, and spades. To save her mom, Aggie must join them. A proud nerd and teen scientist, Aggie doesn't believe in gods or in luck. Her OCD is under control, mostly, and her mom, Rachel, has just finished building a dark matter machine that could win back her job as a physics professor. When Rachel disappears, Aggie's search brings her to the dangerously handsome Jack of Hearts, a demigod with the power to control luck. Rachel may have been captured by bad luck gods. To save her, Aggie must join Jack and his fellow Valentines. She finds herself whisked into their world of opulent mansions, gorgeous people, and fancy cars. But being a demi-goddess isn't all glamour and popularity. It can be deadly. Aggie must master her newfound luck powers, battle the dark suits, and brave the unlucky underbelly of Detroit, all while keeping her OCD at bay, or risk losing her mom forever. Girl of Hearts is Book 1 of the Luck God series. It is a contemporary fantasy series featuring royal intrigue, slow-burn romance, and a mind-bending original magic system based on the 4 card suits. The show is Freya's Fairy Tales, and that is in 2 parts. So fairy tales are something that we either read or listened to or watched movies of as kids. And also the, weeks, months, years of working on your novel to then get to hold that in your hand is kind of a fairy tale for you as well. So I like to start out with first thing, is there any fairy tale or short story that you remember watching or listening to or reading as a kid, and did your favorite change over time?
Hmm, that's a good question. I would have to say, I don't know if it's a fairy tale or more of a folk tale, but Robin Hood
Yeah.
is one that comes to mind for me. Just because I don't know. I think that some of the themes are so universal. Like there's a fun to it where they're like just in the woods, like having a good time
Yeah.
playing tricks on the rich people, but also it's weird, like the themes that are important in those stories are still resonate today, of like the
Mhm.
fairness of rich versus poor, and just leadership, legitimate leadership versus illegitimate leadership. So it's an interesting one.
So did you listen to it or did you watch the Fox movie of it?
It's interesting. My mom, when I was a little kid, she read to me all the time, and I had a set of like abridged classic books. It
Mhm.
was really cool. Like I like the Count of Monte Cristo and
Mhm.
um all these, like all the classic, sort of stories. And I had there was a Robin Hood version of that, and then I also had a set of like really cool hardcover books that were illustrated by N.C. Wyeth, and I had a Robin Hood of that, and my mom would read it to me.
And were they
Um,
different?
they were different, yeah, different versions. So,
Huh.
I had those two. I mean, I remember the Fox one more when my little brother was a kid, but
Mhm.
I do remember that one. And then when I was a little older, the Kevin Costner Robin Hood Prince of Thieves movie, that was I was a little
Mhm.
more, a little older, and that one came out. But um, Yeah, so yeah, it's a classic, it's
So
good.
did that one stay your favorite throughout? You just liked went from cartoon to
Yeah, I mean, it
more
stayed
not
one of my
cartoon?
favorite. Yeah, I mean, like King Arthur. I mean, well, I was in like third grade when I read The Hobbit, so I think really that it was like kind of the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings that like
Mhm.
it's like once you've like hit that, you're not really going back to Little Red Riding Hood. It's like
Right, right.
that's how. But I was really into Tolkien,
Yeah.
really into The Hobbit, and like just really all my spare time was like imagining pretending to be in like fantasy worlds, like that. There was not the proliferation of fantasy stories that there is now, but
Right.
I really was into that world.
And so at what age did you start to think, "I want to start writing like this?"
Oh, I was like small. I was probably like third or fourth grade, and I had a little dare folder with my like little scribbled. I was like beginning a novel based on my like pretending adventures. And I mean, I got like 25 pages or something into the little
We've gotta be
novel when I
around the
was a little
same
kid.
age if you had a dare folder
I had
and
a dare folder.
stuff.
Yeah, maybe so. Yep, yep, dare folder. So yeah, yep.
And so
I
now you
began young.
I was trying to count. So you have 3 books that you co-wrote, and then
Hmm.
you have
Hmm.
the ones that you're doing the Girl of Hearts series that you're doing now.
Yep.
How long did it take you to write the first full-length one that you did?
So yeah, so I have the three that I co-wrote. I have two that are published that just I wrote,
Mhm.
and then the series that's coming out. So I have five published now, and then the others coming out. But um, the first novel I ever wrote is one that has never been published and probably never will be. But it was more, just like literary fiction. I mean, I always also love the kind of classic, like um, Hemingway type of great American novel writers, literary
Mhm.
fiction back in the day. So I began, trying to write the great American novel, and it was just very whatever, your first novel. So that will not be
Yeah.
published. But my second one is published. That was The Sleepwalkers,
Okay.
which is a YA horror book, and that one is available. Yeah.
Okay. So the first one you were like, "Yeah, maybe not for public eyes."
Yeah, I did submit. I submitted to a couple like little literary publishers, and I still remember one of the pieces of feedback I got from an editor on it, which was spot on. Which was, it's like he was like, it's beautiful. The prose is lovely. He's like, but it's like a piece of cake that's all frosting. And that was totally spot on because it had really very little structure. I was like
Mhm.
not trying to be held down by plot or anything like that. It was just beautiful writing of this like weird love story, which was just weird and had an ending that was like totally out of the blue, not foreshadowed at all. And you're just like, okay, you know, no thought of market or like what people would think. It was pure art, pure art.
So you
Yeah.
you took Tolkien's descriptionese a little too far and left out the plot.
Yeah, it was. I mean, well, it had like things happened. Like there was a plot, but it was not like logical or like following any kind of discernible like pattern where it would make sense. Yeah,
So
I don't know.
the first book that I wrote was about our guinea pigs, and there are,
Oh,
like,
nice.
pictures of the guinea pig my mom saved, like, we actually, like, bound it ourselves, and, like, it was for,
Hmm.
I don't know, some school project or whatever, but, that will never see the light of day, but I do have it
Right.
because
Yeah.
it's,
Yep.
like, nice and bound, and we, like, hot glued fabric around these cardboard pieces for the cover, and it's
Yeah.
great, but
Yep. Yeah.
no, that will
Yeah.
never be published.
Yeah. I also have like a 200-page screenplay I wrote. And instead of having fun my freshman year of college, that's what I was doing, writing this like epic screenplay about like this guy who had AIDS and like assisted suicide, but he like then there's this woman he falls in love with who's like love is gonna save him. It's so cheesy. It's like unbelievably just
Did
super
you
cheesy. But
so freshman in college, did you tell any of your friends you were writing
yeah, well,
this?
yeah, I know, yeah, I did tell people I was writing it. I would be like, they'd be like, "Oh, come out, hang out with us." I'd be like, "I can't. I have to work on my screenplay," and I really believed I was going to win an Oscar for it. I was very,
And
very.
now you don't
Now
think that?
I'm afraid to look at it. It's certain things. It's just I mean, even my work now, almost like I'm always afraid to look at it, but then now at least I look at it and I'm like, oh, this is actually cool. Like I like this. I'm like pretty happy with it. But like there's still that fear of looking back. Some things I just won't go back and look at. I'm just like, no, I will not do that. That's one. I will not crack the spine. I will not look at it again.
So I talked to one author who told me to like save copies of everything because you never know like when you might go back. And like I'm one of those like you, I started writing and attempting to write novels young, but then I could never like develop storylines
Hmm.
and or like, fully develop. I could get, a couple paragraphs out and then the story was gone.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I never saved any of those because I would probably be going, what was I trying to do here?
Right. Right.
But
Yeah.
also, I am so and I say this on literally every person I talk to. I started narrating, obviously. I mean, I've read aloud for like, I don't know. First book I remember reading aloud was Little House on the Prairie when I was like, I don't know, probably 8 or 9, because I'm like, in my head, I can picture the house we were at, and we left there at 9, so it was before 9. But I remember like reading that aloud, probably not well and probably with no character voices, but that's like the first book I remember reading and liking. And then I read all the time. I was, instead of I'm going to stay inside and write my screenplay, I'm going to sit on the couch and read. So that's what I did.
Hmm.
And then for the last couple years, I mean, I'm considerably older than 9 now, but, all that time, the last, like, probably 10 years, I've been, like, looking for something that I could do that had to do with books. So instead of sitting on the couch writing, can I get paid to, read these books and review them? Or can I get paid to, like, maybe do some light editing or, like, beta reading or something? I didn't know that was what that was called at the time, but, can I get paid to read, basically?
Yeah. Yeah.
And accidentally stumbled across narrating last year, was like, "Hey, I can do this." So here I am now, and I actually have a classic fiction podcast that I host under a different name. So
Uh
I am familiar with the books you mentioned because I've probably done them
huh.
already.
Sure. Well, yeah, I think it's so cool the proliferation of just the infrastructure to be able to create audiobooks that
Hmm.
exists now. Audiobooks are such a wonderful format, and we're so lucky to be living in the digital era that we're in. That
Yes.
people record them, and that there's the infrastructure to bring them to market. It's awesome. It's really
Would
cool. So
all
it's cool
the
that you're doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and then now I'm like trying to write my own novels as well, and so fully I have better storylines now. I'm more than a few paragraphs in now. But I like getting to talk to and we'll get to this, but I always ask like, do you have any tips for authors? Because, you know, I talked to someone a couple hours ago who she just published her first book, but she's gonna know more than someone who hasn't published anything yet.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm. Yeah.
and every one of you guys has different. You, for example, have built up a considerable TikTok following doing your mostly goofy videos is what I see. So
Hey, I'm trying to be serious in all of them, but geez, no, just kidding. Yeah,
definitely not.
they're right. No, yeah, yeah. I definitely bring humor into it. I mean, TikTok has been amazing for me, and I haven't been on there that long. I started just in February, so it's been only
Okay.
a couple months, really. But um, I was seeing a lot of on Facebook groups of authors and stuff. People being like, "Oh yeah, TikTok. It's really really good for connecting with readers." Blah blah blah. I'm like, "Oh, okay, maybe I'll give it a try." I think like a lot of people, I pop on TikTok and it looks like a bunch of 15-year-olds doing a bunch of like jackass type
Yep.
of stunts. They're like
Yeah.
dancing weirdly. And you're like, I
I
don't know if
don't
this
know
is
why it
for
starts
me.
everyone with
It's
the
always starts.
dancing and the
Yeah,
stunt. Like,
yeah,
why?
yeah. And it's like rapid fire, and you're like, okay, I'm having small seizures. Like, I don't know what's happening. So I'm like, I don't know. But the thing that sort of drew me into it was a lot of authors were like, man, I see how great TikTok is, but I'm just not comfortable being on camera. And
Right.
for me, so my background was not only writing all along, but my degree was in theater from college,
Mhm.
and I lived in Los Angeles and did like TV commercials for years and stuff like that. So I'm like, I'm very comfortable on camera. You know,
Yeah.
I enjoy being on camera. And so I thought, well, you know, this might be a good fit for me. So I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'll just give it a shot. And yeah, I found that I've really enjoyed it. I mean, it's a powerful, powerful way to connect with readers, and I appreciate my past experience of being traditionally published and doing kind of the whole promotional milieu that existed at that time, like around 2010, where my other books were beginning to come out. And you know, I think if you want to be as an author, really appreciate TikTok. You know, sit in a Barnes and Noble for 4 hours, you know, hoping some people come through who like your genre.
Yeah.
Because, and not to say it wasn't great, and I connected with a lot of readers that way, but you know, it's just the way it is. You might be sitting there for an hour, and maybe two people come by who read your kind of genre, you know.
Mhm.
And other than that, you're just sitting there. So to be able to instantly connect with hundreds or thousands of people who are like, you know, excited and engaged with what you
Right.
do, is really powerful and just so much fun. So I really enjoyed it.
So, how long did it take you to write your first full-length novel, out of stage writing?
Uh, you know, that's a hard question because it was like many years ago. It was a long time ago that I wrote that first one. I mean, I probably wrote the first draft in, you know, a couple months, you know, maybe 3 months or something. But
Mhm.
then, like everything I write, revise it a lot. You know,
Right.
minimum, you know, minimum really, I go through something like beginning to end like 3 or 4 times before I will even show it to anyone, you know.
Mhm.
Um so definitely the initial draft is the tip of the iceberg in terms of the work that goes into it.
And so what ultimately led you to deciding to publish that?
Well, oh well, that one never got published. That one,
Oh, that's right, that's right.
it never will. So
So your
I
first one
tried.
that actually got published, how long did that one take you?
So that one, I mean, that was kind of weird. I don't know how long it took me to write it again. I don't remember. Probably 4 months or something to write it, and then revise it for some, you know, some months after that. And then I didn't get published right away. It's kind of a long story of how I actually did end up getting published, but I got a contract for the trilogy. It's called the Tracks series. Book one is Dark Territory, and I wrote that with Charlene Keel, who's a great writer who had done all kinds of interesting. She was like a Playgirl editor, and she had a uh, daytime, you know, show, daytime drama of a book she had made that she was like a head writer on and stuff like that. So she
Mhm.
did all this interesting stuff, and then she was sort of looking for somebody to co-write with, and I had an idea that she liked. So anyway, we together got the contract to write that series, and then as that was taking place, so I was in the really weird position of having my first book deal without having written the book, which is just bizarre, right? No one ever
Yeah.
has that experience. So anyway, I was like, okay, well, great. I have a book deal. Now I have to write the book. So we did that. And then as that process was going forward, I was like, hey, I got some other books I wrote, you know, check out The Sleepwalkers and Blood Zero Sky. And so I gave those to the editor I was working with, and they were like, oh yeah, we like these books a lot. We'll totally publish these. And so that's how that all
Okay.
um,
Now, Girl
came
of
about. Yeah.
Hearts, is Girl of Hearts traditionally published as well, or did you self-publish those?
This one, yeah, those are going to be my first indie published series. So
Okay.
I'm jumping into indie publishing right now.
And so what made you change directions with that?
Well, you know, first of all, I spent a lot of time querying and doing that whole process,
Mhm.
um, and just and I even and I had an agent for a while as well, and had books, you know, shopped around through an agent and stuff. So I've kind of seen both sides of it.
Mhm.
And for Girl of Hearts, it went to a lot of agents, and I was just getting like great feedback from everybody, like, "Oh, this book is great, but it doesn't fit my list at this time." You know, like a lot of that, and a lot of even like now I'm to the point now where I'm like even like friends with a couple agents, you know, and they're like, "Yeah, this is great, blah blah blah," but you know, at this time, you know, so it's like, okay, fine, you know, and so at some point you're just like, well, you know, you look at all these gatekeepers, and you have agents trying to guess what the editor is going to like, the editor is
Yeah.
trying to guess what the reader is going to like, or you know, even the bookstore buyers, and the bookstore buyers are guessing what the reader is going to like. It's like this game of
Mhm.
telephone. Like
Yeah.
we really live in an era where
You don't even need
You
all
know,
those people.
you don't need all those people. And at the end of the day, having been traditionally published, I know that at the end of the day, you're right back to like, okay, now after jumping through all these hoops with all these gatekeepers, now your book is going in front of readers and you have to promote it, and ultimately readers will decide yes or no whether that book is
Right.
successful. So it's like, okay, why, why are you gonna like go through all these, jump through all these hoops trying to get all these different gatekeepers to appreciate your book, as they try and second guess what somebody else is going to like. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
I can short circuit all that and just go straight to readers, with all the control that has. I think for years I was not as experienced in marketing as I am now. I was
Mhm.
not as savvy with social media as I am now. I was not as confident in my um, taste as an artist and as a marketer as I am now.
Mhm.
So for example, definitely my book series when it first came out admittedly with like the wrong covers, and the publisher was just like, we like these covers. What do you think? And, my co-author and I were like, it's different than anything else that's out there, which could be
Yeah,
a
I
good thing or a
noticed there
bad
were
thing.
two different sets of covers up on Amazon.
Yeah, and even the Barnes and Noble buyer, was like, we don't really love these covers. Publisher's like, well, we're pretty far down this path, so we'll put them out with these covers. And yeah, it didn't go as well as it should have. And so
Yeah.
part of being indie is like, you know what, I
You can
picked the
do what you
cover.
want. Yeah.
Yeah, I picked the cover. And for some people maybe that's not helpful if they don't have that skill set
Yeah.
to like you have
But I
the
mean,
taste of to pick a good cover, but
yeah, I mean, I talk to at the end of the day, for me, I plan on designing my own, but that's something
hmm
that's in my wheelhouse. So,
sure,
but I'm
sure,
like, if you aren't someone that can do that, you can look at how many different books and how many different people on TikTok that I'm sure if you ask any author on TikTok and say, hey, who made your cover? They'll tell you who made their
yeah,
cover so you can, support a small business or whatever. But yeah, I have one author that he's traditionally published, but the first book in his trilogy, I start narrating his books next week. But the first book in his trilogy, he didn't like the cover, so he hired for the second book. He said, "Hey, I'm going to make the cover myself," and they were like, "Okay." So,
hmm
but he didn't
yeah,
like whatever it was the publisher did for the first one, and you know wheeled and dealed, I guess, for the second one to make his own cover. So,
yeah, right. Which
but
which
I know
depend.
some publishers won't
Yeah,
let you do that. I know, some won't let
yeah,
you do that.
right. Most of them will not, but I mean, sometimes you can get some input or approval, permission to approve the covers and things
Mhm.
like that. But yeah, usually there's just you just have certainly a lot less control over the creative process. And also,
Right.
as your own publisher, the other thing is, you can put a book out, it can be out for 3 weeks, and you realize that nobody likes the cover, and it's not getting clicks, it's not getting sales, people aren't into it,
Yeah.
it doesn't quite read to the genre, and you can just put a
Fix
new
it.
cover on it.
Yeah.
You have that control. You don't have to go
Yeah.
through the marketing department and this department and that department and your editors meeting with the executives and this and that.
Yeah.
Like none of that exists. You're like, this cover's not working. Get a new cover, put it on there.
And I
It's
mean,
kind of amazing to be able to do
beyond
that. Yeah.
even like the visual part of the, getting them to buy it, the income side of things too, if you're not paying out all these other people.
hmm
Now, if you're hiring someone to pay your cover, obviously you have to, pay for all of those parts as well, but you have a little more control with picking someone within your budget, ideally someone who's good within your
hmm
budget to do that as well. Now, I thought Girl of Hearts had released already, but I think I saw it's up for pre-order right now.
Correct. Yeah. It's up for
Okay.
pre-order. It's going to be out June 22nd.
Okay, and the audiobook, because I know I saw she just finished that, so that should be up about the same time.
Right about the same time. Yeah.
Okay.
It's being approved by ACX right now. So yeah, probably be right about the same time.
It's taken about 2 weeks for my last couple ones,
Oh, really?
so,
Well,
yeah.
depending on how fast they go. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I've got that it takes anytime I submit a book nowadays, I'm like, "It's gonna take either 2 days or 2 weeks, somewhere in between."
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So within the next couple weeks, it'll be out. Yeah.
So, did you know when you finished the book that you wanted it to be made into audiobook?
Yeah. I mean, well, that was one of the things that was really helpful too about TikTok is like, I just went on TikTok and was like, hey, everybody, like, how do you enjoy your books? Like, how do you
Yeah.
experience books? Like, do you do paperback? Do you do ebook? Do you do audiobook? And one of the cool things is going straight to readers, and about 20, so about a quarter of them said,
Mhm.
yeah, audiobook is their preferred way, to experience books. And I personally, I do a ton of audiobooks myself. I usually
Mhm.
have a book going on my phone, and I usually have an audiobook going for when I'm working out or driving around or cleaning
Mhm.
the house or whatever. So yeah, and I didn't want to leave anybody behind with this book release. I want to make sure
Right.
that, however you enjoy reading, I want you to be able to snatch up my book that way. So it was important to me to do it.
So you list it up and you start getting, I mean, I imagine you had multiple auditions. What were you listening for as you're listening through these people that auditioned? Was there any like
Yeah.
particular like it has to nail this or like what were you looking for?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an interesting process. This is my first time being through that process, so that was fun.
Mhm.
It's also interesting for me as being an actor, having an acting background to listen to it. Kind of the first hurdle for folks was just like sound setup. There are some of them that you listen
Yeah.
to, and of course, it's not like edited, it's not mastered or whatever. Those auditions, but you can tell some of them just don't have a great sound setup.
Yeah.
And if there's really like the sibilants are, the S sounds are sounding really weird or something like that. You just go, like, okay, I can tell technically it's not there. Some people, it would be
Well, and some authors wouldn't notice that, to be quite honest. I mean, you
right.
will
Yeah.
because you have more of that background where, like, I can tell you my stuff that I did at the beginning before I got this set up sounded terrible and people still paid me for it. So,
Sure. Well, yeah. So, sure, that's true. I'm sure, but and I'm sure, and I hope some of those folks are still getting work and everything too. But,
right,
I was like, okay, I want to make sure that it's the most professional sounding that it can. And then
right.
another thing that I didn't think about ahead of time that was an important determining factor was just like some people, the way their voice was, it was like, okay, can I listen to this for 11 hours? There's some
Yeah,
people who like, okay, like a couple sentences, you're like, oh, their acting is nice. I like the way they're delivering that line. I like this. I like that.
yeah,
But you're like, okay, for 11 hours. And sometimes I'd
yeah.
listen to it a couple times, and go, okay, could I just, veg out, be on a three
Yeah,
hour car ride and have this going in the background? And sometimes it was like, no, it
yeah.
just,
Well, and
it's like a certain soothing quality or something,
well, and I don't
that
know if
needs
you
to be
remember,
there.
and I don't care if you insult me on here, but I actually did audition for your book. But I mean, and even when I reach out to authors on like social media that don't have audiobooks, I'm like, I get that you may not like my voice, and that's part of the game. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't, if that's not your cup of tea, I'm fine. I'll move on to the next one. But
Right.
I think
Yeah,
Paige
right.
did a great job. So like nothing against her at all. She's great. But um it was like today's like you're my first author that like I auditioned for your book and you didn't
Right.
hire me, but I'm like, hey, let's still
Awkward.
do
No, just
this.
kidding. Just kidding. No, and I appreciate you having me on. Honestly, I can't remember specifically about your audition to comment on it, but I can say so. Generally, a couple other one thing.
I
One
can
thing I
tell you
will
mine
say.
wouldn't have had bad background sound issues because I'm
No, no, I can see you got your
yeah.
setup is legit. That's great. So one thing that Paige did that was really good, just as listening throughout her work on there, is she had a really good knack for and it's hard to describe what this is, but um, creating for capturing the structure of the writing. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? She really did a good job connecting to structurally what I was doing, and um,
Well, honestly, that's not something that can be learned. That's like you
I
will
don't think
probably
so.
work with
No.
her a lot because she knows how you write now.
Yeah, right. It just felt like when she would say a scene, I didn't have to like I don't know, work to envision it. Like
Mhm.
her voice was like in sync with the structure of
How
the
you pictured it
language.
in your head, pretty
Yeah,
much.
and it's hard to describe what. I don't know if I'm capturing it well, but she did a good job with that, and then just of course acting in general, and I'm probably more you know nitpicky or picky than probably other um people are, again,
Mhm.
because of an acting background of like
Right.
just little things about the way certain lines are delivered or whatever.
Now,
But
what
I
I
will
can
say,
tell you is I've seen a couple of authors list their books up and they will be very specific with this is
yeah,
exactly what I want, like trying to take over the narrator's job. Yours
yeah,
would couldn't have done that or I would not have auditioned for it because if someone's that
yeah.
nitpicky up front, I'm like, I have no idea how they're going to be on the back end. But if you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
no.
Well, and the other thing is and also, when I'm not doing writing stuff, I'm an executive director of a theater and a concert venue. So like I understand letting artists do their job.
Hmm.
Like in the theater, I'm not in there directing the play. Like that's the
Right.
director's job. The
Right.
choreographer is going to do the choreography. The music director is going to do the directing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go in and micromanage those things. So
Right.
by the same token, yeah, like I'm not going to micromanage a narrator's job. With Paige and I, there were a couple like accent things that she would do an accent and she'd be like, is that right? Is that too far? Too much this, too much that. There were a couple of things like that we like dialed in together. But yeah, I think that's part of the cool thing about audiobooks as an art form is that absolutely the narrator brings something to it. And that's one thing that's fun as a writer is you can learn something about the character and something about the writing by what the narrator brings to it because they can
Hmm.
bring out different colors and they can have an inflection or a color of an emotion in there that you're like, oh, that's not really, I didn't necessarily see that in there, but I get it now and it works. I like it, whatever,
Hmm.
so it's a cool process. It's been fun.
Well, and I feel like too, part of it is, picking the narrator that you like and then trusting them to do what they want. So, like, what I'll usually tell people is like, writing the book, that's your baby because you're the author. You wrote this book. And if you did a good job of writing your book, not everybody does, but if you did a good job of writing your book, I should be able to read it as the narrator and picture the attitude of the characters to get the voices correct for the
Hmm.
characters. And so that's, and I'll tell authors, the writing of the book is your baby, the audiobook is my baby. So you have to, hope that, you put this up thinking it's ready to be made. So
Yeah,
and so
right.
far so far I haven't had any that I had a couple like um, the scene could have been an angry scene or an emotional scene, and I read it angry, and the author came back and said, "Hey, I really wanted that more emotional." Okay, that's fine. I'll swap it out. Like, not
Hmm.
that, not
Hmm.
not a big deal. And then I've had other authors that were like, "Oh my gosh, you got to the emotional part, and it was just like, we're bouncing along all this nice narrative, and then all of a sudden, it's like, oh my god, I want to cry." So,
Right.
but that is, it is acting, and it's not normal acting because obviously we've got to do all the different voices
Yeah, yeah.
ourselves. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's really, yeah, it's a challenging acting gig. I mean, I'm impressed with people who are able to do it because it's got to be tricky.
J. Gabriel Gates liked the story of Robin Hood when he was younger. Robin Hood is a legendary heroic outlaw originally depicted in English folklore and subsequently featured in literature and film. According to legend, he was a highly skilled archer and swordsman. In some versions of the legend, he is depicted as being of noble birth, and in modern retellings, he is sometimes depicted as having fought in the Crusades, before returning to England to find his lands taken by the sheriff. In the oldest known versions, he is instead a member of the yeoman class. Traditionally depicted dressed in Lincoln green, he is said to have robbed from the rich and given to the poor. Today we'll be reading Robin Hood and the Monk. Don't forget, we are continuing the original story of Beauty and the Beast on our Patreon. Robin Hood and the Monk. In summer, when the woods are shining and leaves are large and long, it is very merry in the fair forest to hear the birdie's song, to see the deer draw to the dale and leave the high hills free, and shadow themselves in the green leaves under the green wood tree. It befell on Whitsun early in a May morning the sun up fair did shine, and the merry birds did sing. "This is a merry morning," said Little John, "by him that died on the tree. A more merry man than I am one lives not in Christianity. Pluck up thy heart, my dear master," Little John did say, "and think that it is a very fair time in a morning of May. Yet one thing grieves me," said Robin, "and does my heart much woe, that I may not on solemn days to mass or matins go." "It is a fortnight and more," said he, "since I my Saviour see. Today will I go to Nottingham," said Robin, "with the might of mild Mary." Then spoke much the miller's son, "Evermore good to him betide. Take 12 of your strong yeomen, well weaponed by thy side. Such a one who would thyself slay, that 12 dare not abide. All of my merry men," said Robin, "by my faith I will not have go. But Little John shall bear my weapon till I wish to draw my bow." "Thou shalt bear thine own," said Little John, "master, and I will bear mine. And we will shoot, betting a penny," said Little John, "under the greenwood line." "I will not bet a penny," said Robin Hood, "in faith, Little John, with thee. But for every one as thou do shoot," said Robin, "in faith I'll bet you 3." Thus shot they forth, these yeomen two, both at bush and shrub, win or lose, till Little John won of his master 5 shillings for socks and shoes. A fiery strife fell between them as they went by the way. Little John said he had won 5 shillings, and Robin Hood said shortly, "Nay." With that Robin Hood called Little John a liar and smote him with his hand. Little John waxed wroth therewith and pulled out his bright brand. "Wert thou not my master," said Little John, "thou should pay for it sure. Get thee a man whoever thou will, for thou get me no more." Then Robin goes to Nottingham, himself mourning alone, and Little John to marry Sherwood, the paths he knew every one. When Robin came to Nottingham, certainly and without lie, he prayed to God and mild Mary to bring him out safe one more time. He went into St. Mary's Church and kneeled down before the cross or rood. All that were inside the church beheld well Robin Hood. Beside him stood a great-headed monk. I pray to God, woe unto he, for he recognized good Robin as soon as him he did see. Out of the door he ran, at once he did run. All the gates of Nottingham he made to be barred every one. "Rise up," he said, "thou proud sheriff, hurry up now with a bound. I have spied the king's felon, forsooth he is in this town. I have spied the false felon as he stands at his mass. It is all your fault," said the monk, "it's from us he does pass. This traitor's name is Robin Hood, under the greenwood lined. He robbed me once of 100 pounds, it is never out of my mind." Up then rose this proud sheriff, and quickly he prepared. Many was the mother's son to the church with him did fare. And at the doors they thoroughly thrust with staves for every one. "Alas, alas," said Robin Hood, "now miss I Little John." But Robin took out a 2-hand sword that hanged down to his knee. There where the sheriff and his men stood thickest, toward them then went he. Thrice through at them then he ran, forsooth to you I say, and wounded many a mother's son, and 12 he slew that day. His sword upon the sheriff's head certainly he broke in two. "The smith that made this," said Robin, "I pray to God give him woe." "For now I am weaponless," said Robin, "alas, against my will. Unless I flee these traitors now, I know they will me kill." Some fell in swooning as if they were dead, and lay still as any stone. None of them kept their heads, except for Little John. "Stop your wailing," said Little John, "for his love that died on the tree. Ye that should be doughty men, it is a great shame to see. Our master has been hard beset before, and yet escaped away. Pluck up your hearts, and leave this lament, and listen to what I shall say. He has served Our Lady many a day, and very well surely. Therefore I trust in her especially, no wicked death shall die he. Therefore be glad," said Little John, "and let this morning be, and I shall be the monk's downfall with the might of mild Mary. And if I meet him," said Little John, "it will be him versus me. Look that ye keep yourselves over by the meeting tree under the small leaves well, and spare none of the venison that goes in this vale." Forth then went these yeomen two, Little John and Much together, and stayed at Much uncle's house. The highway was near as ever. Little John stood at a window in the morning, and he looked forth from an upstairs room. He saw where the monk came riding, and with him a little page too. "By my faith," said Little John to Much, "I can tell thee of tidings good. I see where the monk comes riding. I know him by his wide hood." They went into the way, these yeomen both, as courteous and gracious men. They asked news of the monk, as if they were his friends. "From whence come ye?" said Little John. "Tell us tidings, I you pray. Of a false outlaw called Robin Hood was taken yesterday. He robbed me and my fellows both of 20 marks and 7. If that false outlaw be taken, forsooth that would be heaven. So did he me, said the monk, of 100 pounds and more. I was the first to get my hands on him, you may thank me therefore. I pray God thank you, said Little John, and we will when we may. We will go with you with your leave and bring you on your way. For Robin Hood has many a wild fellow, I tell you in certain. If he knew ye rode this way, in faith ye should be slain. As they went talking by the way, the monk and Little John, John took the monk's horse by the head at once and anon. John took the monk's horse by the head, forsooth you two I say. So much did the little page, for he should not escape away. By the throat-piece of the hood, John pulled the monk down. John was not afraid of him, he let him fall on his crown. Little John was so angry and drew out his sword so fast. The monk saw he should be dead, Lord mercy did he gasp. He was my master, said Little John, that thou hast chosen to fell. Shall thou never come at our king for to tell his tale? John smote off the monk's head, no longer would he dwell. So did much the little page, for fear lest he would tell. There they buried them both in neither bog nor heath, and Little John and much together bear the letters to our king. Little John came in unto the king, he knelt down upon his knee. God save you, my liege lord, Jesus watch over thee. God save you, my liege king, to speak John was truly bold. He gave him the letters in his hand, the king did them unfold. The king read the letters immediately and said, I say to thee, there was never yeoman in merry England I longed so sore to see. Where is the monk that thee should have brought, our king did say. By my truth, said Little John, he died along the way. The king gave much in Little John 20 pounds in certain, and made them yeomen of the crown and bade them go again. He gave John the seal in hand to place in the sheriff's palm, to bring Robin to him and no man do him harm. John took his leave from our king, forsooth to you I say. The nearest way to Nottingham to take he went that way. When John came to Nottingham, the gates were all barred tight. John called up the porter, he answered him all right. What is the cause, said Little John, thou shut these gates so fast? Because of Robin Hood, said the porter, in deep prison he is cast. John and much will scarlet, forsooth to you I say. They slew our men upon our walls, and assault us every day. Little John asked after the sheriff, and found him very soon. He opened the king's privy seal, and placed in his hands the boon. When the sheriff saw the king's seal, he took off his hood anon. Where is the monk that bore the letters, he said to Little John. He is so pleased with him, said Little John, forsooth to you I say. He has made him abbot of Westminster, a lord of that abbey. The sheriff made John good cheer, and gave him wine of the best. At night they went to their beds, and every man to his rest. When the sheriff was asleep, drunken of wine and ale, Little John and much forsooth took their way unto the jail. Little John called up the jailer and bade him rise anon. He saw Robin Hood had broken the prison and out of it was gone. The porter rose anon for sure as soon as he heard John call. Little John was ready with the sword and stabbed him through to the wall. Now will I be the jailer, said Little John, and took the keys in hand. He found the way to Robin Hood and soon had him unbound. He gave him a good sword in his hand to protect his body and crown. And there where the walls were lowest, anon they did jump down. Then the cock began to crow, the day began to spring. The sheriff found the jailer dead, the town bell did he ring. He made a cry throughout the town, whether he be yeoman or knave. Whoever could bring him Robin Hood, a reward he should have. For I dare never, said the sheriff, before the king do come. For I know for certain, forsooth he will have me hung. The sheriff made to search Nottingham, both the street and alley, as Robin was in merry Sherwood, as light as leaf on tree. Then bespake good Little John to Robin Hood did he say, I have done thee a good turn for an ill, repay me when thou may. I have done thee a good turn, said Little John, forsooth thee to say. I have brought thee under the greenwood line, farewell and have a good day. Nay, by my truth, said Robin, so shall it never be. I make you the master, said Robin, of all my men and me. Nay, by my truth, said Little John, so shall it never be. But let me be your fellow, said Little John, nothing else do I care to be. Thus John got Robin Hood out of prison, certainly without lie he had. When his men saw him whole and sound, forsooth they were very glad. They filled up on wine and made him glad under the leaves so small in the vale, and ate pasties of venison that was so very good with ale. Then word came to our king how Robin Hood was gone, and how the sheriff of Nottingham does never look him upon. Then bespake our comely king, and in anger high to see, Little John has beguiled the sheriff, in faith so has he me. Little John has beguiled us both, and that full well I see, or else the sheriff of Nottingham high hanged should he be. I made him yeoman of the crown, and gave him money with my hand. I gave him security, said our king, throughout all merry England. I gave them security, then said our king, I say this all to thee, forsooth such a yeoman as he is one, in all England are not three. He is true to his master, said our king, I say by sweet St. John. He loves better Robin Hood than he does each of us upon. Robin Hood is ever bound to him, both in street and in stable or stall. Speak no more of this matter, said our king, but John has beguiled us all. Thus ends the tale of the monk and Robin Hood, or I'm amiss. God that is ever a crowned king, bring us all to his bliss. Thank you for joining Freya's Fairy Tales. Be sure to come back next week for the conclusion of J. Gabriel Gates' journey to holding his own fairy tale in his hands, and to hear another version of his favorite fairy tale.